And hey, there, I can hear myself now, Tommy. Fall camp for about 4 days now, and the Grizzlies, they get started tomorrow. They reported yesterday they have a meetings day today, and now here they are tomorrow hitting the practice field for the first time, so I'll be able to take in most of that practice as well, so we'll get that kicked off as well. But check out SkylineSportsMT.com for your best and most comprehensive Big Sky Conference coverage, especially when it comes to the Bobcats, the Grizzlies, and the greatest rivalry in the West. It is the Montana Football Hour. First hour of every Monday show from here through the rest of 2019. We'll be breaking down football in the state of Montana, mostly Bobcats and Grizzlies, but we'll also touch on some Frontier Conference stuff. Well, of course, we'll have some high school highlights for you, a variety of guests. So stick right here with us every Monday, and this will be a fun one with a bunch of different impressions and audio from Montana State's fall camp and some storylines to watch for the Grizz, some position battles I'll be watching, just where I think these two teams fit into the national mix. The thing I want to start with, though, is just fall camp in general. One of the most influential and best books I ever read was a book called The Junction Boys by Jim Dent. It was about the Texas A&M teams of the late 1950s when Bear Bryant was still the coach there before he went to Alabama. And I think it's one of the origin points for where so much of the mystique and so much of the glory and so much of the blood and guts narrative that comes from fall camp, I think it was sort of originated in that book. And we've heard, the legends of the old school fall camps under guys like Newt Rockne and Bear Bryant and, Joe Paterno and a variety of other old school type coaches. And there's so many different stories, like you're soft if you need to get a drink of water, or we're going to run you until you're about dead. And I think that there's a romanticism attached to it, but there's also a foolishness attached to it. I mean, there's no toughness associated with heat stroke and dehydration. I think that stuff is ridiculous, and I'm glad that stuff has changed. But as I was standing on the rail at Montana State watching fall camp, the Bobcats, they practice on Deitch Field, which is a 4-field grass complex across from Bobcat Stadium. They practice there when they're doing a lot of their fundamental work and a lot of their install stuff. And then when they have their quote-unquote play-it days where they're doing a lot of team drills, they go over to Bobcat Stadium. Well, on the Deitch Field days, I remember as recent, this is my 10th year covering Montana State fall camp, and this upcoming Grizz camp will be the, count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th Grizz camp I've covered, but those haven't been consecutive years because I had that middle gap where I was just covering the Cats, working as the sports editor of the Daily Chronicle over in Bozeman. But I did cover Montana's fall camp 2006 through 2009, and then I've been back here covering the Grizz. Covered Bob Stitt's first camp 2015 pretty extensively. Not so much 2016. 2017, definitely, and then last year with Bobby Hauck, definitely, and this will be the second straight year been covering Coach Hauck. But I've watched just the way fall camp stuff has evolved and changed, and some of it's better. Some of it, I think, helps minimize injuries. I think it keeps the kids more healthy, more engaged. I think you can get more stuff installed, especially from a mental perspective, and I think all that stuff is good. But I also think that there's a lot of it where the proving ground that fall camp used to be, the internal competition, the prove who's a bigger man. And I know that's not a popular thing to say in today's America, but I think that's why America gravitates towards football so much, because aside from the military, it's the last great proving ground when it comes to pure grit and toughness and fortitude for young men in America. I think that's why we gravitate towards it. And watching fall camp at Montana State, there's some stuff where you can see exactly why they're doing what they're doing. There's a lot of stuff that is systematically planned out, and there's a lot more organization than there ever was, and there's a lot less chaos than there ever was. I think those are good things. But as my brother was telling me, when he was playing for Coach Hauck back in 2009, when you get on the bus to go to the River Bowl or go to Dornblaser Field, you don't know what's coming in practice. You don't have a practice schedule that's pinned on your locker that says period 1 is going to be individual drills, period 2 is going to be special teams, and all down the line. Now these guys have a systematic plan. They have a meeting to tell them what they're going to do every practice. Then they have the practice schedule in their hands so they can mentally prepare themselves. Then they're expected to go out and execute. And again, I think that's good for the implementation of the mental aspect of football. But in terms of the physicality, the hitting, the winning position battles truly by outlasting another man via your fortitude, that stuff's gone by the wayside quite a bit. And granted, the first 3 days of camp, I watched at Montana State. First 2, no pads. The third, just shells. And then today, I went down there right before I hit the highway, and it was still shells again. So I haven't seen the full contact version of all this stuff. So it does come with a little bit of a grain of salt. But there's so many times because of this organization where you're prioritizing and you're maximizing the efficiency of everything that you're doing. And again, I think that part is good. But there's also so often where, like, for example, when the DBs were doing some pod stuff and the special teams guys are over here doing this stuff, and you got some individual work going with the linebackers and the D linemen, the offensive line basically were doing individual fundamental work, but they were just going 2 at a time. When you're talking about a group of 20, that means once your turn goes, you wait for 9 other pairs of guys to go. So you're standing around a lot. You have a ton of time to catch your breath. And I think that's good from a health perspective, but I just don't know what that does in terms of the testing of the dudes. Now, the second day at Montana State, they definitely had a pretty vigorous conditioning test at the end of practice to test things. But I just couldn't help but thinking, man, even just compared to my old fall camps at Big Sky High School back in the early 2000s, or compared to so many of the camps I covered in the mid-2000s at Montana, or even compared to the camps I covered at Central Washington in the early 2010s, and even compared to Jeff Choate's first camp no less than 4 years ago, things just seem a lot more easy. And so I asked Jeff Choate exactly that following Tuesday's practice.
We've talked a lot about the way fall camp has changed over the years. Is there anything you miss about how maybe it used to be?
I just think these guys have got it so dadgum easy. It's ridiculous. I mean, I understand the reason we're doing these things, and I think it's good for the game as a whole. I just feel like I was born too early, and I had to. I was thinking about this, like we would do. I mean, even as a coach, we're doing doubles in Florida. Okay, that was not a pleasant experience, And so yeah, I think that I really applaud the people that are making the changes in the game, and I do think it's what's best for the student athlete. But I'm old now, and so I remember when. And the good news is, like I told those guys a couple years ago when we had our last double day, I said there's going to be a generation of kids that will grow up and not even know what a 2-a-day is. Is that good for society? I think that's something we should all ponder. And so I'll leave it at that.
You guys have talked so much about the family atmosphere. How do you cultivate fierce competition within the scope of keeping the family dynamic?
Hey, man, it boils over every once in a while, right? I mean, we want to get that thing to 211 and not go to 212 on the water. So, and it's okay as long as they leave it on the field. I think that's part of a healthy competition. Those DBs are going to jaw at the wide receivers, and you're going to have that going on. And as long as they can drop their baggage here and make sure that it doesn't spill over into the locker room, and they can understand that it's all in the spirit of trying to make each other better.
With this being your fourth camp, do you think? Does it seem a little bit more business-like maybe than it did early when you first got here?
Yeah, I don't yell as much. I think that's probably good. So I think our kids understand the routine and what we're trying to get accomplished, and I think they understand that we're going to be smart with them and try to build them for game day. Not have a ton of contact, but get what we need to get to have our saw sharp and ready to go when we get down to Lubbock. And it feels easier, I guess, because we're all on the same page.
To be fair, real expectations at Montana State this year, so you don't want to wear anybody out. You don't want to have a season-ending injury occur in fall camp. So I get some of the premise of laying off of them, but I also think that, to be fair, you have to mention just how year-round college football is now. Guys are almost required to be at the school that they attend for 11 months and a week out of 12 months every year. They get about 3 weeks of leeway, 1 over Christmas and 2 in the summer. Besides that, you're likely going to be required to be in summer school, at summer workouts, all sorts of different things. So you're going to be required to be at the player-run practices that occur throughout the summer. You have 15 spring ball practices spread over the span of 6 weeks. You have a full fall camp in August leading up to then a 4-month season. You have winter conditioning that lasts for 8 to 10 weeks. So there's very few times when you're not competing and working out and trying to be in peak physical condition. So to be fair, I think it is smart to lay off guys to a certain extent. I just think that there's the element of toughness and the trials of toughness is something that's gone by the wayside. So that's Jeff Choate's perspective from Montana State. I can't wait to ask Bobby Hauck the same thing tomorrow when I talk to him. I'll be interviewing him around 2 p.m., so stay tuned for that. We'll have that on Tutel Nuanez. It is Tutel Nuanez, and it is the Montana Football Hour. Every Monday, first hour of every Monday, we'll be bringing you coverage from throughout the state of Montana. When it comes to the sport of football, it's going to be mostly Montana and Montana State, but we'll also have some Frontier Conference stuff. We're going to also have some high school stuff spliced in here. But right now, it is all Montana and Montana State during this Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford in Missoula. The Stats FCS poll came out today. That's the one that I trust the most. It has the most voters in it, about 150 media members from across the country, including myself. I just got granted a vote this year. Very flattered to be granted a vote, which is a sort of an affirmation of everything we've tried to build at Skyline Sports, which it's cool to be recognized as a nationally relevant media outlet that covers the Big Sky, at least we hope, as good as anybody. But that poll, not very surprising in terms of the top 4, and this is exactly how I voted my top 4 as well. North Dakota State, number 1, 142 first-place votes. They have almost 400 more points than James Madison. James Madison, number 2, even though they finished 2018 at number 9. Yeah, they had 14 first-place votes. South Dakota State got a first-place vote. They're number 3, which is exactly where they finished the 2018 season. Eastern Washington, they are number 4. They were the national runner-up last year. They got 3 first-place votes after finishing last season number 2. UC Davis out of the Big Sky Conference, they're number 5. Their final ranking was in 2018 was number 7. And then number 6, Jacksonville State. So that Eastern Washington-Jacksonville State game in week 2 or 3, that'll be number 4 versus number 6 in the preseason ranking. So that'll be a huge non-conference game for the Big Sky and for the Ohio Valley. Maine, who was a semifinalist a year ago, they're coming in at number 7. Weber State, who was the co-Big Sky champion for the second year in a row last year, they came in at number 8. Wofford, who finished last year number 13, they are up to number 9. They're an intriguing team out of the Southern Conference. Kennesaw State, a team that's been building a ton of momentum since bringing football to the forefront about 5 years ago. They finished last year number 5. They come in at number 10. And then 11 through 20 goes Towson, Nichols, Colgate. Montana State in at number 14, a little bit higher than they finished last season. They were number 17 in the final poll last year. Illinois State's 15, Indiana State 16, Southeast Missouri 17. So that Bobcats game versus SEMO, the third week of the year, is going to be a really intriguing non-conference game, one of those huge Big Sky crossover games with the Ohio Valley that is definitely going to resonate both for the Cats and their postseason prospects, but also for the rest of the Big Sky as well. Northern Iowa's in at number 18. Furman is 19. North Carolina A&T is 20. Elon out of the CAA, they were the surprise of last year. They're at 21. Delaware from the CAA is 22. Sam Houston State, who used to be just such a powerhouse, they're at 23, so they're still ranked, but they're nowhere close to what they were a couple years back. And 24, Princeton from the Ivy League. We'll get into that with Craig Haley. Should Ivy League teams be ranked? They don't play very tough schedules. They don't participate in the postseason. So where do they fit into the national mix? I want to ask Craig Haley that when they have him on the top of the hour. And then Montana, the Montana Grizzlies, number 25. So the Grizz ranked in every single preseason poll, despite missing the playoffs for a third straight year last year. One thing I got to touch on, I never want to get into the politics of the world on this show because I know so many people listen to this show to get away from that stuff. They want to have this be a release. They want this to be fun. They want to just talk about sports. They want to hear about the Grizz. They want to hear about the Bobcats. They want to hear about all the great high school athletes all across the state, and I understand all of that. And I know that there's been some national ESPN personalities that have gotten into some hot water in recent weeks and over the last couple of years for becoming too political. I mean, Jamel Hill was fired. Dan Le Batard is currently suspended. So I know that there's some hot-button issues out there, but there was 2 mass shootings over the weekend. And I think first and foremost, we just have to acknowledge when that sort of stuff happens because it's so tragic, it's so disgusting, it's so hard for us to comprehend and to compartmentalize. And it's honestly just it's unbelievable that this situation still exists, especially when you're talking about just going to the mall, just going to Walmart, just going to Sunday school, just going to do your everyday things, the things that make you happy, the things that reward you and give you life. The fact that there is a chance in America that you could lose your life in a situation like that, it's just deplorable and it's concerning. And the reason that I bring this up is first just to acknowledge the victims and their families and give thoughts to all of them. And, to just remind people to not let the fear overwhelm your way of life. It's hard to not think about, especially because this has become so widespread. But the reason I bring this up is, to me, this weekend when college football camps are opening, it's usually one of the most joyful times of year because, again, nobody's losing games in in August. Nobody has an opponent to prepare for. It's all just about internal expectations and optimism and the anticipation for something that brings us all together, which is college football. I think there's a certain community element. There's a certain pageantry attached to college football, and I think it's why it resonates, especially in rural places like Missoula, Montana, like Bozeman, Montana. There's nowhere else in the state of Montana, save maybe a Pearl Jam concert, where you're going to go see a gathering of 25,000 people that are in attendance to see the same thing. I mean, we only have 900,000 people in this state. So the fact that there's nearly 50,000 packed into 2 different football stadiums on a college football Saturday, that's pretty unbelievable. But when I was going through my Twitter timeline all weekend, because sometimes, during college football opening weekend for fall camp, you're kind of glued to the social media, seeing what's going on at Eastern Washington, seeing what's going on at Weber State, seeing what some of the other writers are writing about the Cats and the Grizz. And my timeline was just filled with all this stuff about the mass shootings and all these political arguments. And the thing that I would just express to everybody is just that I know that there's all sorts of polarization going on in America right now, and it's exhausting. It's hard. But I just don't think that we have to fight and argue about everything. Everything does not have to be a divisive deal. I think we can all agree that no one wants our fellow Americans getting shot in public places, period. Doesn't matter where you stand on gun rights. Doesn't matter what you think of assault rifles. Doesn't matter what you think of the Second Amendment. Doesn't matter what you think of the NRA. Doesn't matter what you think of the left or the right or any of that stuff. We're all humans. We're all on this great journey together. And I think that trying to unite ourselves in situations like this, rather than argue over who's right, what needs to be done, why not just let the moment itself resonate and grieve for those that lost their lives? I just think it's ridiculous that social media has become such a breeding ground for hatred. And that's the thing that drives me nuts, is I can't even write just a simple story about a kid from Montana without having, say this kid plays for the Cats. Well, all of a sudden now my Twitter feed is filled with all these Grizz fans bashing this guy. Now say this kid plays for the Grizz. Now my Twitter feed's filled with all these Cat fans bashing this guy. It's like, these are kids. Lay off it. Why can't we just let something just be? Why can't it just be a good story? Or in the case of these mass shootings, a terrible story. It doesn't have to incite an argument. It doesn't have to divide us even further. And I just think that this time of year, we should just remember what we love about summer, what we love about the fleeting days of summer, what we love about the optimism of the return of the school year, of the football season, all those different factors. I think there's a lot to be said there, and I don't think we need to sit there and argue about it, argue with each other all the time over everything. My advice to everybody on Twitter, just be nice. On Facebook, just be nice. If you're going to use social media, you don't have to use it for vitriol. You don't have to use it for divisiveness. Just don't say anything at all, or just let it linger. That's my rant. I hope that everybody can find some solace, some escape, some fun, and some good-hearted laughs when you listen to Two Tell Nuanez. And we'll be back with some more deep football analysis that hopefully can take your mind off of anything and everything. 3 big things from Bobcat and Grizzly fall camp with Brooks Nuanez. Two Tell Nuanez, 129 ESPN Missoula.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate. In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters. And you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it, but not at Selway Armory. Selway Armory is locally owned with knowledgeable specialists that can answer your questions. In addition to the expertise, though, Selway Armory also has a bigger selection and lower prices than the box stores. When you're in the market for firearms and accessories, save money with the experts at Selway Armory. Selway Armory, 2825 Stockyard Road, Unit E6, and online at selwayarmory.com.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Summer is more fun with a cold beverage at your side. Stop into Town Pump and pick up refreshing Pepsi and Coke products, 12 packs for only $4.99. Complete your picnic with Calypso Lemonade, 2 for $3.33. Well stocked and ready for you. Town Pump.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up, oh yeah.
For 20 years, the Missoula Osprey have brought Missoula a fan-friendly experience in one of the most beautiful summer settings in America, and the baseball has been top-notch as well. ESPN Missoula is happy to be the exclusive radio carrier of the Missoula Osprey once again this summer. Tune in to 102.9 FM to hear every single Osprey game as the Birds chase another Pioneer League title. The Missoula Osprey broadcasts are brought to you in part by Widmer Brothers Brewing, Diversified Construction and Materials, Mission Paint, and Selway Armory.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, 102.9 ESPN Missoula. Dante Olson is the only player from the Big Sky Conference on the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. The Montana senior and preseason Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year earned consensus All-American honors a year ago by piling up 151 tackles to lead the nation. He also led Montana with 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 fumbles, and 3 interceptions. The 6'3", 237-pounder was one of 3 finalists for the Buck last season, given to the best defensive player in the football championship subdivision. On Monday afternoon, when the Miami Marlins took the field in Game 1 of a doubleheader against the New York Mets, Isan Diaz made his Major League Baseball debut. Diaz becomes the 73rd player from Missoula who played for the Osprey to grace baseball's biggest stage. Diaz played for the Osprey in 2015. Entering that 2015 season, he was a relative unknown, but he took the Pioneer League by storm, hitting .360 with 13 home runs and 51 RBI. Credit to Isan's 2015 monster numbers. He was tabbed as a midseason All-Star in the inaugural PBL versus Northwest League All-Star game, a Pioneer League postseason All-Star, and the Pioneer League MVP. And finally, former Montana offensive lineman William Pales was claimed off of waivers by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last Thursday from the Indianapolis Colts. Pales has now played for 6 teams after signing in the NFL as an undrafted free agent in 2014.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
It is Tutel Nuanez minus Tutel, just Nuanez rolling with you today. What we're marching through, another Montana football hour presented by Lithia Ford. As always, broadcasting to you from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, now carrying Husqvarna dirt bikes, Beta dirt bikes, and the brand new Razor 1000s. If you want to check us out online, you can hit us up, 1029 ESPN Missoula. We'll have a whole bunch of stuff on there from fall camp on both the Montana and Montana State side of things. Like I said, it's the Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford. Lithia Ford of Missoula is proud to announce the arrival of their all-new 2019 Ford Ranger. The 2019 Ford Ranger features the best in-class towing of up to 7,500 pounds, best in-class payload over 1,800 pounds, and is rated the most fuel-efficient gas-powered pickup in America. If you're in the market for a mid-size pickup, then look no further than the all-new Ford Ranger. Get yours today at Lithia Ford in Missoula. Earlier today, I was in Bozeman, covering Montana State fall camp. Here's some analysis from Brooks Nuanez, SkylineSportsMT.com, on both the Bobcats and the Grizzlies.
It is the Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford of Missoula, breaking down the Big Sky Conference, the Montana Grizzlies, the Montana State Bobcats. It's that time of year, fall camp raging on around the country. Got started in Bozeman on Friday afternoon, actually more like Friday evening, and Montana, they reported on Sunday, and they'll be back in action live for the first time on Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to see, to compare and contrast the Grizz and the Cats. We've got a chance to see the Cats live and in person Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and won't get a chance to see the Grizz until Tuesday. So a little bit of ahead of the game here covering the Cats, but it'd be interesting to see, and there's a lot of interesting stories coming out of both sides. If you checked out SkylineSportsMT.com, we give you our 4 biggest storylines to watch for both Montana State and Montana. But now joined to hear Brooks Nuanez recording this remotely from Bozeman, a little bit ahead of Monday's show. Brooks, thanks for being with us.
Absolutely, man.
Montana State gets kicked off Friday evening, and a lot of hype surrounding this Bobcat team. There's a lot of new guys that we were eager to see, including a couple Washington transfers in the form of Amandre Williams and Jason Skrempos, who are expected to play on that defensive line. If those guys can have the success that Bryce Stirk had a year ago, that's a welcome addition for Montana State, and it looks like they have a chance to really reload up front despite losing 3 senior captains on that front line. They have 4 starters back on the offensive line and 5 guys that have starting experience on the offensive line coming back. They have all 3 of their wide receivers coming back, including a pair of captains in Travis Johnson and Kevin Cassis. They do have to replace a bunch of tight ends. They had 3 senior tight ends last year, but it looks like they have a chance to upgrade, at least in terms of overall talent at that spot, especially with the addition of true freshman Ryan Lonergan, who's really turned heads early in camp. And then on defense, the secondary stacked, probably the best pair of safeties in the Big Sky Conference with Braden Conkle and Jacque Allen Roman back there, and maybe the best press corner in the league in Munchie Filer. The other cornerback spot is definitely going to be one that's going to be highly contested. But all that said, Montana State still does have some glaring weaknesses at some key positions. And so we're going to get into the 3 big things that we think about both Montana State's fall camp and Montana's fall camp from Brooks' perspective, starting with the Cats. So, Brooks, first and foremost, what did you think of the overall vibe of Montana State the last 4 days, and what is your number one big thing for the Cats this fall camp?
Well, the vibe was so different than college football has been for so many years as college football just logistically has changed with no two-a-days, less contact. A completely different vibe. The first day, a lightning storm came and they 30-minute weather delay, come back out, a little bit disjointed. It felt like, maybe this season's getting off on a funny foot. But then day 2, things started to look pretty good for the Cats. Lots of different depth at multiple positions. And then day 3, they put on the pads and you got to see them mixed up a little bit. So overall, it was a pretty good start to camp. But things have changed in college football, and I think that'll be evident across the country. It'll be interesting to see the differences with Montana's camp and kind of how those things have progressed. Overall, number one storyline for the Cats has got to be the quarterback battle, and what does that look like? Redshirt sophomore Tucker Rovig comes in probably as the leader in the clubhouse, and then redshirt freshman Casey Bauman comes in 6'7", 230 pounds, looks the part, spins the ball pretty darn well. Both quarterbacks struggled early in both days, but then settled in. And then we did not get to see a full practice of the third day due to media constraints. So quarterback battle's got to be the number one thing. Cats still don't have a number one there, which is probably their biggest weakness, which is a big part of football, as everyone listening to the Montana Football Hour knows. You got to have a quarterback if you want to win games. The schedule plays favorably to the Cats, but head coach Jeff Choate has mentioned several times that he wants to get a starting quarterback named after the first scrimmage, which is next Saturday, August 10th, which is a very tight timeline for a group that's still relatively young and relatively inexperienced.
Like Brooks mentioned, yesterday's practice was closed, but apparently Tucker Rovig had a better day than he did the first 3 days. He really struggled the first 3 days. Seemed like he turned the corner. Here's what Jeff Choate had to say following Sunday's practice.
I actually thought the offense kind of had the upper hand, hit some shot plays down the field. Tucker had a very good day, very efficient in the pass game, taking advantage of what the defense was giving us, and I think it was good.
Interesting part about a quarterback battle between a redshirt sophomore like Rovig and a redshirt freshman like Casey Bauman is they tried to bring Bauman along last year, but mostly he was just operating as a scout team guy. He did travel. He was practicing with the varsity, but not a lot of reps within the scope of the offense, whereas Tucker Rovig, he's had multiple chances to win this job. They pitted him against Chris Murray coming out of the spring of 2017. And then last year he was kind of fighting it out with Murray again that spring. And then into fall camp fighting it out with Troy Anderson. And he's never able to really seize control. And I thought Brooks asked a good question to Jeff Choate the other day just about what does Rovig need to do that you haven't seen that would get him to become the entrenched starter by that August 10th deadline. And, I think it's so fascinating because you kind of know what you have when it comes to practice. And Choate has talked extensively about how when Rovig gets in a rhythm, he's a lot better. But it takes him a long time to get into a rhythm. He's not in a rhythm right out the gates hardly ever. And I think that's just a worry if you're the Cats.
Yeah, it's absolutely a worry. And a big part of it, and we've had a lot of people ask us about, well, is he not be able to get in a rhythm or produce at practice because Montana State has a very good defense? And there's definitely a part of that I think plays. There's a lot of 1-1s, ones versus twos. There's really never a situation where there's a big mismatch on offense or defense, which is probably the style of camp that I would prefer as a coach or a fan or a player. But there's definitely not a lot of opportunity to get rolling, considering that you're kind of just thrown into the fire if you're not doing one-on-ones. So we talk about it a lot. In individual style drills, the quarterbacks still have not taken steps to where you're very impressed or amazed by the style of throwing just even on air. So those are things to have a concern about. But I also think that Jeff Choate has given Tucker Rovig every opportunity and will continue to do so. Again, only a redshirt sophomore, a guy who's played a little bit. And Casey Bauman is only a redshirt freshman. I mean, he's a freshman who really came from a small 2A high school in Washington with not a lot of experience reading and playing under fire. So I think that plays a lot into Bauman's development. But I think Rovig will continue to get the chances.
The Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford in Missoula. Little segment recorded in Bozeman, Montana, breaking down Montana State and Montana. Big 3 storylines coming out of each fall camp. And Brooks, the second one you had on your list was inside linebacker. I don't necessarily need to break down each individual guy as much as just talk about the competition broadly. Right now, Callahan O'Reilly and Michael Jobin running with the 1s. Nolan Askelson and Walker Cozy rolling with the 2s. Blake Flovin and Jahari Martin rolling with the 3s. But the guys with the most experience, who are the most proven players, are Josh Hill and Chad Cano, a couple of guys that missed the second half of last year. In Josh Hill's case, the duration of last year with the exception of the North Dakota State game. And so you got guys that have experience that have made plays that are a little bit behind because of their injury situation. You got guys that are kind of working hard, try hard guys that are playing newer positions to them. We talk about O'Reilly and Jobman. Then you got the upstart in Nolan Askelson as a redshirt freshman out of Billings Senior, former Class AA Defensive Player of the Year, and a guy who's put in all the time in the world, Walker Cozy, a fifth-year senior. And then you got the new guys that are kind of trying to make a splash. Blake Flovins, a junior college transfer, Jahari Martin, a true freshman. But you have 8 guys there, and I think it's a good situation to have 8 guys and have 8 bodies. But on the other hand, none of those guys has really risen to the top. None of those guys are elite players. Josh Hill has shown that he can be a really good player in the Big Sky Conference, but it's a matter of can he get healthy, and the rest of those guys have a ton to prove. So in your ideal world, the way that position battle shakes out, who is the top? Who do you think is the best suited? What's the ideal situation for Montana State? Who are the best guys to man that spot if everything went according to plan?
Well, I think that Josh Hill, you always want to rely on experience. I think that Josh Hill is probably their best player on the inside, especially his ability to have shown on film what he can do. I don't think that's going to change. I think he'll be a football player through in and throughout for a long time. Even though he has suffered a back injury, he's the kind of guy that has been injury prone, but when he's on the field, he's very productive. So I like Josh Hill, Nolan Askelson there a lot. I think Nolan Askelson's the kind of guy, sometimes we put a little bit too much weight in when you're young and good, you have more upside, but sometimes guys just max out even when they're young. So I don't know what his potential is, but I like him a lot now, and a big part of that is the fact that he is young. The fact that he is kind of a clean slate, a guy that you can teach a lot of those positions. With K-9's scheme and the way that Troy Anderson is going to play outside linebacker, Sam linebacker, in a field-based scheme. So I assume during the Montana Football Hour that all of you guys are up to speed on your X's and O's and schematics that Tutel and Nuanez have taught you. But when you're playing a field-based scheme where the field is the strong side no matter where the strength of the offense is, then Troy Anderson is going to be isolated in a large area of space with Bryce Stirk likely playing strong end. Amandre Williams, a transfer from Washington, is going to play buck end, which will be in the boundary. So you have both edges secure, which really puts a lot of emphasis, especially on the will linebacker. So I think that the Mike in most defenses is going to be vitally important. But in this scheme, I think that the will is as important as any position at Montana State, and it has been for quite a few years in multiple different styles of scheme. So not only is the Mike the most important, I think that will is really going to become such a vital position for them. I don't necessarily know who fits in there, but front runners for me personally as a guy who likes different styles of players, I think Josh Hill and Nolan Askelson are probably the guys that I like the best of that group.
It's a good point because Montana State ran a completely different scheme under Jamie Marshall and then co-defensive coordinators with Jamie Marshall and K-9 for the 9 years under Rob Ash. But the run fits were all about the will linebacker, and that's why you saw guys like Jody Owens, the 2012 Big Sky Conference MVP, Alex Singleton, who's a guy who's fighting for an NFL spot with the Philadelphia Eagles right now. Those guys had a ton of opportunities because everything was filtered back to them because, like you said, the edges were secured. Montana State had such good defensive ends back then that a lot of times everything filtered back right towards that will linebacker. A lot of times the Mike linebacker, which Clay Bignell did as well as anybody, is just he's taking on the block and he's making the cutback happen because you know the will guy can clean it up. And that's a spot that I think Montana State really needs. Last year you saw that same thing. Grant Collins would take on the blocker at the point of attack, cut back right at Michael Jobman. Michael Jobman had a bunch of tackles, but did he make very many plays? That's where Montana State really needs to take the next step. Third storyline for Montana State, Brooks, you mentioned just the offensive changes. Montana State under Jeff Choate has relied so much on running quarterbacks. Chris Murray rushed for over 1,100 yards, the second most ever by a quarterback in Big Sky Conference history. 2 years ago, Troy Anderson shattered the Big Sky Conference record for rushing yards by a quarterback, 1,412 last season. Montana State has been one of the top 3 rushing teams in the league, and they are the only team in the league that's led the league in rushing other than Cal Poly since Cal Poly joined the league in 2012. That's how well the Bobcats have run the ball. But they've had a unique factor in the fact that they've had the most prolific running quarterbacks in the Big Sky, in the history of the Big Sky Conference. The scheme can't help but change if you're going to roll with Tucker Rovig or Casey Bauman. And that's going to be an interesting factor to see how it does change.
Yeah, I think it'll absolutely change. I think Matt Miller is not going to take this opportunity lightly as far as being able to showcase something that could potentially better him in his career. I think he's the kind of guy. I think Matt Miller's the kind of guy that is FBS coordinator, FBS head coach in his future. So I think that he's the kind of guy that's going to take this opportunity and showcase exactly what he thinks offensively has been wrong with Montana State as far as changing those things. I don't think he'll sit around and do a lot of the same stuff and waste time with that. So I've seen a lot of bubble screens starting to be implemented. One thing that I've been interested with is a lot of tempo and a lot of hurry up, which is interesting with a young group of quarterbacks that has unproven to put them in a lot of tempo situations. But that's college football in this day and age, and you have to have that in your back pocket at all times. Overall, I think that Montana State's offensive scheme will be the biggest difference and the biggest change, the third storyline to watch going through fall camp this 2019 season.
Over the next week or so, we'll also give you some breakdowns on the defensive scheme because I do think there's going to be some tweaks under Kane Iona. It seems like a much better fit there. Transitioning into the other side of the rivalry, Montana, the Grizzlies open fall camp on Tuesday. In terms of their practice, they have a meeting day today, and I think that's where Bobby Hauck lines out everything that he has for expectations. Everybody meets with their position groups. Everybody it's designed to just make sure that everybody's on the same page so they can practice as efficiently as possible. And Brooks, I know you only played for Coach Hauck for 1 year, but I know it's something that left an impression on you, especially just the regimented details of the way he operated fall camp. Do you remember back then having a day where it was just a meeting day to lay out everything, or is that something new that Bobby Hauck is doing right now?
I mean, yeah, there's definitely a night before where you meet. But like I say, college football has changed so much as far as there was always, and we'll see, I haven't been around Bobby Hauck's camps in a while, but there was always this element of surprise. Nowadays, especially in Bozeman with Jeff Choate, there is this understanding of exactly what's going on. Like there is hours worth of meetings of just showing you how to do the drills that you're going to do. That wasn't necessarily the case with Bobby Hauck. He was more of like a jump in the back of the line as a young guy and see what happens. You better pay attention because it's going to come fast. Everyone in front of you might know, but part of the learning curve was a little bit of the unknown. It was a part of the test that you would get kind of put through. So I assume that there'll be some stuff like that that's similar. They'll always throw some curveballs at you. But yeah, there's always a part of getting together and talking about what the camp looks like. But I think that college football is changing, and I think it's probably for the better, as Jeff Choate has mentioned several times. But there's going to be some things that we who all have known about it for so long will miss.
That's one thing that's interesting for me is watching Bobby Hauck's practices, his first tenure, and then now watching them now. So much of them are the same, especially the beginning parts. There's so much attention to detail. They do all these special teams circuits and individual circuits. There's so much prioritization on the individual development before anybody goes into any sort of team drill. And to me, we agreed that was one of the number one storylines coming into this Grizz camp is how much more fluid are they this year compared to last year? Because when you had a program under Bob Stitt, they did so much team and so much install all the time. There was hardly any dedication to the individual development of guys. And now that's been the complete opposite under Bobby Hauck. The first spring, it was a complete learning experience, and there was really no position battles. It was all just about everybody getting on the same page. Last fall, Hauck basically bemoaned his team for about 3 weeks because he did not think they were practicing efficiently. Then they turned a corner, and you could really see them get better. But to me, they looked so much more efficient and so much more on the same page in spring. If they can carry that momentum into the fall, I think that could really accelerate the program as a whole. Because one thing you and I have talked about, Brooks, is just the fact that Montana somehow gravitated away from the no-star system that prioritizes player development in the scope of a team dynamic into more of a star system that prioritizes high-level recruiting, but not the same all-for-one, one-for-all attitude. That's one thing that Bobby Hauck has really tried to get back as the identity of Montana is this no-star system where everybody has a chance to individually develop within the scope of a team game. And it seems like if Montana can get back on that page, that could just go so far into the Grizzlies reaching the level that they used to be at. But it's going to be fascinating to see what they look like day one of camp because they seem like they've made progress in that particular area, but they're nowhere near where they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, nor do I think that will happen overnight. I think that that's a pretty long process. I can't necessarily quantify how long that took to get to there in the first place, but I think that it's more than a year process. I think it's more than just a recruiting class process. I think it's maybe a generational process that will take a bit of time.
It's interesting to hear you say that too, because it's not necessarily just on Bob Stitt. This is something that's been a trend for 10 years. The individual development of players within the scope of a team was Bobby Hauck's specialty, and that's not been the specialty of the Grizz for the last 10 years. And I think that's why you haven't seen the same level of guys like Mark Mariani and Corey Bierman and Colt Anderson walking on and then becoming NFL players. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. In terms of position groups, To me, it's the offensive line and the corners for Montana. It's the same weaknesses they had a year ago. I think Montana has gone from being a question mark at safety to being good at safety, particularly because of the emergence of Robbie Houck. I think that Montana is just fine at inside linebacker with Dante Olson, Jace Lewis. I think that the D-line, if some of the young guys can rise up, I think they have a chance to be okay. I think the tight ends went from a group that didn't exist to a group that's one of the best in the Big Sky. The receivers, they're as stacked as anybody, led by Sammy Akim, who I think is one of, if not the best receiver in the league. Dalton Snead's a great quarterback, but it's the offensive line and the corners. Can the corners cultivate some more depth? Can they get anybody to challenge Justin Calhoun and Darian Nash? Can some of their transfers like Mikal Tolliver make a splash? But then on the offensive line, how much of an impact do the two junior college transfers make? Moses Mallory and Cordell Pelons, those two guys are crucial. They're going to have to contribute for Montana to make strides. And if they do, then Cy Sermon will be solidified at center. And then you have two guys that are kind of project guys in Conlon Beaver and Colton Kynes at tackle, but they're back for their second year as starters. A lot of times you see them make big leaps. But, Montana, the offensive line was such a huge storyline last year, Brooks, but it seems as if they've gotten a little bit better if these junior college guys can pan out. And also, although the coaching staff and everybody around the league and everybody around the state talked about their deficiencies on the offensive line, they actually operated on offense better than a lot of people expected. They could not convert short yardage stuff, but they hung 50-plus points in multiple league games, and so much of that was Dalton Snead. But also, when you really talk about it, like in the Cat Grizz game, the Cats definitely won the line of scrimmage, but it was not an incredible domination like you'd expect when you're talking about the best D-line in the conference versus the worst offensive line in the conference. So if two new players plus elevated confidence for Cy Sermon, Conlon Beaver, and Colton Kynes, maybe Montana's offensive line has a chance to make a little bit of a jump.
You'd assume so, especially, like you said, I think it's one of the biggest jumps you can make is a young guy, freshman or sophomore, starting on the offensive line, then after a full year of development. The offseason has such a different implication because you know what mass you need, you know what style and technique you need to work on. Just the mass at all. When you're sitting there and you're playing as a young guy at left tackle, and you're taking rep after rep in games, and you're like, wow, 15 extra pounds would help. You know what to do, and you can't do it during the season. So that jump is real. I think that they will improve there. I think they need depth at offensive line more than anything. I think you do have 5 guys that can start, especially if the junior college guys pan out, which it seems to be on paper that they certainly will. At least be functional and or serviceable, if not pretty darn good. I think you need to find a 6th and 7th guy there, no matter what injury happens and attrition happens on the offensive line especially.
I think the good part for Montana is that the 6th and 7th guys now have a chance to be guys that have been in the program and that are a little bit more physically developed. I think that when Dallas Hart is a 5th-year senior and he's your 6th or 7th guy, that's pretty good. And if Brandon Scott or Angel Villanueva, these guys have played in games, and if those guys are more depth guys rather than guys you're relying on to be your best guys, I think it's a testament to the at least slightly improved depth.
Yeah, and the big thing there is those guys have all played, and so if you bring in 2 JC guys and sit Angel Villanueva, what kind of depth does he have mentally to be able to hang in there and contribute to a team as maybe a non-starter? That's a tough position to be in. All those kind of anytime you talk about JC guys coming in and taking starting spots. You have to have a little bit of camaraderie there to get through stuff like that. So depth will be who are those, and vice versa. If the JC guys end up not starting and they came here to start and they end up not starting, how does that room look and feel? So 6, 7, 8 might have plenty of depth to fill those spots, but those roles are really important, and who's willing to seize those roles. Same with corner. I think corner is really shallow. It's a big thing, especially in the Big Sky Conference. Teams are getting back more towards running the ball like they have traditionally. Throughout all of college football, but especially the Big Sky, there's still going to be a lot of passing teams and a lot of aerial assault where you need some corners. So I think that the corner is the other spot. I also think running back's a spot. I don't know that you didn't mention it, but I think running back, even though there's a lot of guys, including some transfers, when we talk about Grizz teams of the past, how do you get away from identity with Robin Pflugrad and Bob Stitt both being a little bit more pass-oriented? You talk about running the ball, and this team right now doesn't have a Lex Hilliard, and that's
right.
And that's definitely not a slight to anybody. But those Grizz teams were really good because they had Chase Reynolds and they had Lex Hilliard and onward and onward and onward. So many good running backs that have come through that have been workhorses and have actually set the pace and set the tone for the entire team across the board of what style of team you're going to be. I don't think this Montana team has that yet, especially up front, but in the backfield, I think it's another position battle to see who can become that true next-level workhorse.
Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford in Missoula. Brooks Nuanez joining us, breaking down fall camp on both sides of the Great Divide. And last point for you, Brooks, just quickly. Bobby Hauck is one of the most unabashedly confident people you will meet. And it's not inauthentic. He truly is so confident. And I talked to him multiple times this offseason. He's not taking the approach of, we're rebuilding this thing. We're going to get this thing back on track. We're going to take incremental steps to get this thing back rolling. No, Bobby Hauck thinks they're going to be damn good this year, period. And he talked about it both on the record and off the record throughout the offseason. Who's going to beat us? If we play at the confidence level we can play at, and we play mistake-free football, and we don't beat ourselves, who's going to beat us? And I think it's a very interesting dynamic. But in your mind, both playing college football and covering college football, how much influence can the confidence of a coach have on a locker room? And do you feel like if Bobby Hauck can instill that unabashed confidence in this Grizz team, that could help them take their games up a notch?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important. I think that college coaching is more important. A college head coach as a tone setter is probably the most important coaching position in all of sports. Due to the outside constraints of how much effort you have to put in with recruiting and fundraising, especially at this level, to appeasing fans with handshakes and kissing babies, all the way to scheme, identity, and presence, hiring coaching staffs, defining what strength and conditioning programs look like. I think it's one of the most important things, one of the most important coaching positions in sports, and I think that the main title or most important job is instilling confidence in a team and instilling mentality. And I do think it's no surprise to me when Bobby Hauck, I haven't heard him say it, and he didn't tell it to my face. I've heard him say a bunch of different things to a bunch of different outlets about where he thinks they'll be. But this is no surprise to me that he thinks they're going to be good, because I have a thing to say to anyone who's listening, is that they should have been good for a really long time. I don't see a lot of dip in talent. I saw a lot of dip in culture. There was a big emphasis of this team has been taking a step back, and it's like, well, I thought for the last decade that if the Grizz line up and they have confidence, that who's going to beat them? I thought that from the day that Bobby Hauck left to the day he came back, and I don't see it being any different, especially with the team now that has a lot of talent.
And that's the biggest difference between those teams when I was in school and you were playing and now. You look at the 2008-2009 teams, man for man. I mean, you put Cole Anderson next to Braden Conkle from Montana State. They're not even close to the same level of athlete. But Cole Anderson is so confident and so fearless in the way that he plays. You look at Dante Olson compared to Sean Lebsock. I mean, Dante Olson is an absolute freak athlete. Sean Lebsock is 6 foot tall, 220 pounds. But the level of confidence that Sean Lebsock played with, the way he was able to line up the Grizz defense, the way that they were able to rally around him, all the players around him on that defense. I mean, you look at the actual gifted talent levels of those guys, they're good, but it was the confidence that they played in. It's like Brooks said, they refused to lose, and that's something that the Grizz have lost, but that's something that is the absolute specialty of Bobby Hauck, is getting his guys to believe that losing is not an option. And I think that was why last year was so hard for them, because they were, call it 2.5 quarters away from being a 9-3 football team. They shouldn't have lost those last 3 home games. Give the Cats a lot of credit for coming back and winning that game, because the Cats won that game. But Montana beat themselves against Portland State. They imploded against UC Davis. They just spit the ball all over the field against North Dakota and absolutely shot themselves in the foot. You change the results of even 2 of those games, they're in the playoffs. You change the results of 3 of those games, they're a playoff seed. And you change the results of all those games, which hindsight's 20/20, but they're in the mix for Big Sky Conference champions. So I agree. The talent level isn't as deficient as people want to let on. And that's been an excuse that's been made for almost a decade now. Instead, I think it really does come down to the mental aspect of it. That's all the time we have with Brooks Nuanez, but check us out, SkylineSportsMT.com. We got all sorts of coverage, and we'll be continuing to grind out Montana State and Montana coverage, both sides of the Great Divide and the greatest rivalry in the West. It is the Montana Football Hour marching on, presented by Lithia Ford, Missoula, Brooks, Nuanez. Thanks so much for being with us.
Absolutely. Get ready to strap it up. Football is coming down the pipeline.
There you go. Great analysis from Brooks Nuanez. Great perspective as well. This is the Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford in Missoula. Lithia Ford Missoula is proud to announce the arrival of the all-new 2019 Ford Ranger. The 2019 Ford Ranger features best-in-class towing up to 7,500 pounds, best-in-class payload at over 1,800 pounds, and is rated the most efficient gas-powered pickup in America. If you're in the market for a mid-size pickup, then look no further than the all-new Ford Ranger. Get yours today at Lithia Ford in Missoula.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce two of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain, they still need to get to work, they need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
The Big Sky Breakdown at SkylineSportsMT.com continues to give you the inside look from around the Big Sky Conference and the state of Montana. The most in-depth podcast in the Treasure State gives you multiple episodes each week year-round with commentary, analysis, interviews, and entertainment from around one of the most storied conferences in the West.
Whether it's full uncut interviews with Montana State head football coach Jeff Choate or Travis Secure's thoughts on his outstanding Montana men's basketball team, everything you need to hear is available on the Big Sky Breakdown. Take a look inside the best stories in the conference and the most detailed analysis in the state. The Big Sky Breakdown, it has you covered.
Whether it's X's and O's acumen of Brooks Nuanez or the comedic banter of Ryan Tutel or the dry humor of Andrew Houghton.
And don't forget the best connections to everybody that matters in the sports world across the Big Sky Conference from Colton Nuanez. And by the way, thank you for calling me funny.
You're welcome. The Big Sky Breakdown will present you with all of it and more at SkylineSportsMT.com.
The Big Sky Breakdown, proudly presented by Town Pump Food Stores and Selway Armory.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
Oh yeah, gotta love it. Reese is playing the good tunes back there today. You must know it's a Monday, trying to get me all hyped up. It is Tutel Nuanez, broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, Missoula. Now carrying Husqvarna dirt bikes, Beta dirt bikes, brand new Razor 1000s, and all sorts of other fun off-road vehicles. Go check them out at KurtzPolaris.com or at the Kurtz Polaris location, 2904 West Broadway. It is the Montana Football Hour. We're already out of time, but we're going to extend it just a little bit, even though it's not going to be technically in the first hour of the show, because we're going to get Craig Haley on the line here just after this next break. Craig is the senior writer and editor of Stats FCS. He's covered the FCS on a national level for a really long time. So we're going to talk about preseason polls, preseason awards and All-American teams, and just where the Big Sky Conference fits into the national landscape. And I also have a little debate I want to have with him as far as Ivy League teams in the playoffs as well. This has been the Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford in Missoula. Lithia Ford in Missoula is proud to announce the arrival of the all-new 2019 Ford Ranger. 2019 Ford Ranger features best in-class towing up to 7,500 pounds, best class payload at 1,800 pounds, and is rated the most fuel-efficient gas-powered pickup in America. If you're in the market for a mid-size pickup, then look no further than the all-new Ford Ranger. Get yours at Lithia Ford in Missoula today. The first Montana Football Hour of August in the books, but we have fall camp coverage for you every single day, both right here, 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide, SWX Montana, and SkylineSportsMT.com. Keep the dial right here. On the other side, Craig Haley, FCS Stats, talking national FCS football, where the Big Sky, the Montana Grizzlies, the Montana State Bobcats fit into the mix. Tutel Nuanez.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Alpine Touch has mastered keeping your taste buds happy by spicing up anything you throw on the grill this summer. Now, let Alpine Touch keep your mouth watering whenever you want their new sunflower shooters. Their new jumbo sunflower seeds seasoned with Alpine Touch's world-famous all-purpose seasonings. And Alpine Touch sunflower shooters will be available all summer at every Osprey baseball home game. Available at retail locations around the state and online at alpinetouch.com. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here with Josh from The Advocates. If you've been in a car accident and need help dealing with the insurance company, you should give The Advocates a call.
It doesn't cost anything at all to call, and I'd be happy to talk with you about your situation. You don't want to have to be dealing with contacting the insurance companies and setting up your claim. We can do that for you from start to finish. We'll take the hassle out of the process so you can just focus on getting better.
There you go, folks. If you've been injured in an accident, give Josh a call, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers, but you deserve an advocate.
Now, the Montana Club's happy hour features BOGO beverages. Our expertly mixed cocktails, microbrews, domestics, and wine are buy one, get one free 7 days a week from 3 to 5:30. Stop in on Friday for Montini night. Sip on a top shelf martini for only $6, 5:30 to close. When you've worked hard all day and are ready to relax, the Montana Club has got you covered with BOGO happy hour 7 days a week, 3 to 5:30 on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Hey folks, it's Tutel Nuanez here, and guess what? Football season is upon us. You know what that means? For the second year in a row, the first hour of every week on Tutel Nuanez is the Montana Football Hour, 60 minutes dedicated to football across the Treasure State.
And even outside the Treasure State as well. The first Montana Football Hour for 2019 broadcast from the Big Sky Kickoff in Spokane. Throughout the rest of 2019, we'll bring you the best in football coverage, whether it's the Bobcats, the Grizzlies, the Frontier Conference, or high school football in the great state of Montana.
There is nothing better than football season. Coulter and I love it. We know that you love it, and we want to make sure we bring it to you. The coaches, the players, the games, the analysis, opinion, and information that makes football run across the state will be right here. 102.9 ESPN Radio, every Monday from 4 till 5. Be more than just a fan, be an educated fan. Everything you'll ever need to know about football across the state of Montana will be delivered to you during the Montana Football Hour presented by Lithia Ford.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, 102.9 ESPN Missoula. Dante Olson, the only Big Sky Conference football player named to the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. The Montana senior linebacker and preseason Big Sky Conference Defensive Player of the Year earned consensus All-American honors a year ago after piling up a FCS best 151 tackles. He also led Montana with 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions. The 6'3", 237-pounder from Medford, Oregon, was one of 3 finalists for the Buck last season, given to the best defensive player in the football championship subdivision. On Monday afternoon, when the Miami Marlins took the field in Game 1 of a doubleheader against the New York Mets, Hassan Diaz made his MLB debut. Diaz became the 73rd former Missoula Osprey to grace baseball's biggest stage. Diaz played for the Osprey 2015. Entering the 2015 season, he was an unknown prospect, but he took the Pioneer League by storm, hitting .360 with 13 home runs and 51 RBI. That helped earn him Pioneer League MVP and the Arizona Diamondbacks Minor League Player of the Year. And finally, former Montana offensive lineman William Pales was claimed off of waivers by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last Thursday from the Indianapolis Colts. Pales has now played for 6 teams after signing in the NFL as an undrafted free agent in 2014. The 6'8", 340-pounder was an all-league player for the Grizzlies.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Craig is on the line.
Welcome. A beautiful summer afternoon in Missoula, Montana. We'll take you into your evening. It is Tutel Nuanez broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, now carrying Husqvarna dirt bikes, Beta dirt bikes, and the brand new Razor 1000s. Check them out at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the first hour, that means you missed the Montana football hour. We talked a lot about just the evolution of fall camp and the way it fits into college football, the ways it's gotten easier, the ways it's gotten more detailed, the ways it's gotten better, the ways it's got worse. We also talk extensively just about 3 big things out of each of Montana and Montana State's football camps. And we also talked a little bit about Dante Olson being named to the Buck Buchanan Award watch list, the only defensive player from the Big Sky Conference. So if you missed anything in that first hour, be sure to check out the podcast available on the TuneIn Radio app or on iTunes or on Spotify, or you can just check it out at the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast proudly presented by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. If you want to check us out on the live stream, you can find that at 1029ESPN.com as well. The stream is presented by Opportunity Bank, your local bank, your opportunity. And if you want to give us a call, you can hit us up on the Rangich Brothers RV hotline, 329-1899. And that's where we go right now. We welcome in Craig Haley, FCS Stats. He's a guy that knows more about the FCS than maybe anybody, a guy who I've been following for years and years in terms of his national FCS coverage. Craig, thanks so much for joining us on Tutel Nuanez today.
I know you know the FCS pretty well too, Coulter, but thank you.
Of course. So, Craig, first of all, let's just talk about this time of year and just the difficulties maybe of just getting a lens on the FCS from a national picture, because we talk about the Big Sky Conference a lot here in Montana, and there's a lot of crossover with talking about the Missouri Valley as well, especially with North Dakota transitioning out of the Big Sky into the Missouri Valley, and some regional rivalries there between the Montana schools and the Dakota schools. But I think a lot of times the Big Sky might get lost on people that follow the Colonial Athletic Association or the Southern or the Ohio Valley, and vice versa. I think people out here in Montana follow Big Sky and the MVC pretty prevalently, but might not have as much of a gauge on the CAA or some of the other East Coast conferences. So from your seat, as a guy that covers the FCS nationally, how difficult is it to keep tabs on 120-plus teams?
Well, as you know, it's a different world. I mean, every game is pretty much readily available, with streaming and in the conference, TV networks that they have and just, instant live scoring. I mean, it's not as hard as you would think. 10, 20 years ago, yes, but, there is such an interest in the FCS these days that it's been made easier for everybody, including the media.
That's an interesting point, too, because I do think there has gained a lot of momentum in terms of interest on both a regional and national level for the FCS. In your mind, where does that come from? What has been the driving force in sort of this renewed and maybe forward-thinking interest in the second tier of Division I college football?
Sports is year-round now. People, follow everything in season and out of season. You're always looking for the next best thing coming in your favorite sport. So I think the whole, NDSU dynasty Carson Wentz going number 2 in the draft, the interest overall by sports fans just in the NFL draft. I think in the last 5 years it's been incredible, the amount of interest in the FCS. It's grown, and yes, a lot of it does have to do with having a dynasty in a sport. And you could be a fan of the Bison or somebody who wants to see the dynasty knocked off, but it drives people to a sport when there's a dynasty.
No doubt, and I think that there's been some really marquee players, too. You look at Cooper Kupp and his rise with the Los Angeles Rams last year before he unfortunately got hurt, and there was all sorts of pundits that were covering the NFL. They're like, where'd this Kupp kid come from? Anybody that covered the FCS, I mean, I covered Cooper Kupp live 9 times. He never had less than 10 catches or 150 yards in a single game that I covered. He was the most surefire punch it as a guy you'd pay money to see. He was as surefire as it's ever been in terms of guys I've covered, and so I was not surprised at all. But I think it is cool to see some of these guys from the FCS, like Carson Wentz, like Cooper Kupp, kind of rise to that national level. What do you think it's been about some schools in the FCS that have been able to garner that sort of talent? In your mind, is it more of a developmental thing, or is it just kind of an extension of that elevated national brand? Where do you think having a number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft for the FCS level, how has that happened? How has the FCS reached that level of prestige?
I think one of the things is, everybody, from an NFL perspective, when they're, when you're coming out of high school, you're not thinking, a guy who might be an inch, too short or split second too slow in the 40. You're not thinking of them on the NFL level. You're thinking of them just, having a nice career on the college level. But these guys are talented players. They're motivated, especially if there's doubt about them, and they have a goal of reaching the next level. So I think, having players in a program for 4 or 5 years, the facilities are so much, better over time. The coaching has gotten better. I mean, just the money keeps going higher and higher in salaries, and you're getting good coaches and the facilities, as I mentioned, that I think these players develop over time, and, they're just there waiting for their chance. And all it takes is one chance. And, players are on equal footing once they're at the next level. As long as they're producing, nobody's going to care where they're coming from as long as they're producing.
He is Craig Haley from FCS Stats. He's covered the FCS on a national level since 2001. I had an interesting conversation yesterday, Craig, with Bryce Stirk at Montana State. He's a guy who's a preseason third-team All-American for the Bobcats, a guy who's a drop-down from Washington, and he could never really break into the Washington lineup, given that they've had half a dozen first- or second-round draft picks on that D-line since Chris Peterson took over. But I asked him, I said, how would you compare and contrast the level of competition in the Big Sky Conference to the Pac-12? And I thought he made an interesting point. He was talking about Zach Redd, Montana State's sophomore center/guard. He's battling for a spot at both center and guard. And Zach Redd is not even 6 feet tall. He's probably 5'11" and a half. He probably weighs about 265, 270 pounds. And it's like Bryce Stirk said. He said, look over at Zach Redd. He would never, ever, ever get recruited by the Pac-12. He would never get recruited by a single FBS school. But he's like, I think that Zach Redd is the hardest player to go against that I have to go against on a regular basis because he's got such a low leverage point. He's such a hard worker. He's so tough. And a lot of times those things are sort of beyond measure. And I think that's one cool thing about the FCS as a whole.
You can't measure heart, right?
Exactly.
I think that's a tremendous story to hear. I wasn't aware of that. And the FCS is just full of players like that just want to show how good they can be when people are doubting them. And that is sort of, out there that, a casual fan of football may look, don't look as highly on the FCS. So these players feel it. And, if somebody like us who follow it extensively know how good it is. But those ones that provide the doubt, well, these players are going to take advantage of it.
No doubt. FCS Stats has been rolling out a lot of the preseason stuff, and this is some of the most fun time of year because it's just filled with conversation and speculation, and none of it really means much at all, but it's a great time to just talk about football and get football back in our lives. So, Craig, let's start with the Walter Payton Award watch list. 5 players from the Big Sky Conference named to the Payton watch list, including Troy Anderson at Montana State, also Eric Barrier From Eastern Washington, a junior quarterback. Jake Mayer, senior quarterback at UC Davis. Case Cookus, super senior quarterback at Northern Arizona. And then we'll call him Charlie T. I still haven't figured out how to pronounce his last name at Portland State. But the big tight end, everybody knows Big Charlie T over there at Portland State, too. Definitely one of the best tight ends in the Big Sky Conference. And then you look at the Buck Buchanan watch list, just Dante Olson on the list for the Big Sky Conference, a senior at University of Montana. And the Big Sky has been a fascinating league to cover over the last 14 years, which is what how long I've been covering this league. And we've seen the ebbs and flows of teams like Montana dominating the league with a gritty, tough, run-first attitude, play defense, smack you in the mouth. And then we saw kind of the other side of the pendulum with Eastern Washington really taking off and dominating the league. And then a lot of teams trying to mirror them, including Montana State for a short period of time, really trying to go high octane on offense to try to keep up with Eastern. And now it's been sort of gravitating towards the other side again with Weber State's rise and how Jay Hill has proven that you truly can win games on special teams and on defense. And that's sort of a similar philosophy that Bobby Hauck brings back to Montana, that Jeff Choate has instilled at Montana State. Even Eastern Washington's running the ball a lot more prevalently and playing a lot better defense than they were under Bo Baldwin, now heading into year 2 under Aaron Best. All that said, you look at those two watch lists and you have a whole bunch of offensive stars on the Big Sky side of things and just one guy on defense. So did that surprise you at all, the fact that there was so many guys on offense from the Big Sky on the Peyton watch list?
Well, you're always going to have a ton of talent on the offensive side in the Big Sky, especially at quarterback. I mean, it's just been a league with such great history at quarterback, including winners of the Peyton Award. So it's not surprising to me. I mean, I'm also glad that we have a tremendous tight end on the list now in Charlie T. Because tight ends aren't always making the list. So I'm not surprised. The 5 players are the most for a conference in the FCS on the preseason watch list. During the season we do add more players. Maybe 10 to 12. So there will be more players added. I do expect that you'll probably get another player or two from the Big Sky. Depends on who develops. You mentioned Bryce Stirk. There's a prime example of somebody who could do it. Just he'll probably keep getting into the opponent's backfield and having a sensational season. Jonah Williams was another one at Weber State. I mean, I think those would probably be the next 2 in line right now, but we're also looking and waiting to see how it pans out this season. So, but I mean, there's certainly going to be another player or two, I think, on the Buchanan list during the season.
And the most intriguing guy on the Walter Payton side of the list might be a guy that could make his way onto the Buchanan side of things, and that's Troy Anderson. Troy Anderson he's such a fascinating guy because 2 days ago at Montana State Fall Camp, I watched him do pass rush drills for half an hour. And he went from not having any idea what he was doing to looking like the second best pass rusher on Montana State behind only Bryce Stirk. And that was just in the span of 3 different individual drills. And then Jeff Choate said today, hey, we're loving what Troy's given us at Sam linebacker. We think he is an outstanding player on the edge. But if Troy Anderson needs to have his hands on the ball for us to win, we're going to get 15 the ball. It's been a long time since I've seen a guy that has the true positional versatility that Troy Anderson has. I truly think that he could play defensive end, outside linebacker, or safety at the FCS level. I think he's proven that he can play quarterback and running back at the FCS level as well. The kid is an absolutely unbelievable athlete who also, just because he picks things up so quickly, he's such a one-rep guy, as Jeff Choate says. It only takes him a couple reps to get things down. But, I mean, can you remember a guy in your almost 20 years covering the FCS, Craig, that has the position versatility that could maybe even land on the watch list of both the Peyton and the Buck?
Nobody jumps to mind. That's a great question. And what's great about him is on offense, he can be a number of positions. It's not like he's a two-way player and he just plays one spot on each side. I mean, you're talking, an all Big Sky, co-first teamer last year at quarterback, and now they can use him at fullback and split him out wide as a receiver. So he is just electric with what he can do. I think he is, certainly the most fascinating player in the FCS because I think that Montana State will use him a decent amount on offense just to give him touches because just him being out there as a threat will change the game for that offense, even if he's not getting the ball. And obviously, you know, he's a big-time linebacker as well. So I think he's truly fascinating. Your question, wow, nobody comes to mind that with this kind of versatility with what he can do.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Jeff Choate coached college football since 2003, various stops at Utah State, Boise State, Washington State, Florida. And Choate's coached some unbelievable players. He coached Dante Fowler Jr., who went on to be the number 3 overall pick out of Florida. He's coached Shaq Thompson. He's coached the defensive line at Washington that includes guys like Danny Shelton and Vita Vea and Greg Gaines. He coached Doug Martin at Boise State. And he says that Troy Anderson is among the most gifted athletes. He puts him in the same sentence as Shaq Thompson and Dante Fowler. So I think that's a true testament to the kid and just his absolutely unbelievable gifts. Craig Haley joining us on the Rangich Brothers RV phone line. Craig, I want to get into the polls with you. The Stats FCS preseason top 25 came out today, and it seems like no matter what 2 through 25 is, you can just copy and paste number 1. It's been the same number 1 for 7-8 years. I mean, I think that James Madison snuck into the number 1 spot for a couple weeks back in 2016, but it's been North Dakota State all day, every day, pretty much for the duration of this decade. And I know that North Dakota State loses a ton. They lose Easton Stick, who's now with the San Diego Chargers. They lose a variety of their skill players, including I think their top 2 running backs. They lose guys at all 3 levels of their defense, including Robbie Grimsley, who started 60-plus games there at safety. Greg Menard, a great outside pass rusher. But they lose Chris Kleiman and a lot of their staff to Kansas State. But it seems like the culture of winning there is just so unbreakable that North Dakota State, they just have this thing rolling. And you mentioned the attention that this brings to the FCS, the fact that there is a dynasty that people either root for or root against. But just how entrenched is North Dakota State? I mean, do you see the Bison as the preseason FCS national championship favorites again?
I truly believe so. And you're right. They only have 7 returning starters. You know, let alone the coaching change to Matt Entz. But you know, the players they keep recruiting during this dynasty are just so talented that, yes, we may not know some of their names as well as, you know, some of their All-Americans, but they're just players that need that opportunity. I think they deserve to be number 1. I think it reflects that way when they're getting 142 of our 160 first-place votes in the Stats preseason poll. At the same time, they are a little vulnerable. I think you can, you know, put Eastern Washington, James Madison, you know, South Dakota State, maybe UC Davis. I think those are the next group that you can definitely say, hey, if it's not NDSU this year, one of these teams is going to win the national title. There's often a surprise as well, you know, like a Towson making the title game at Illinois State. So I mean, somebody else could emerge, but I do think that small group right behind the Bison, you know, makes them sweat a little, even though the Bison are going to be a confident group. All they have to do is just plug in new guys.
It's interesting to watch their recruiting too, because when Craig Bohl left, I think people thought they might take a step back, but they continued to recruit high-level players, and then all of a sudden they started being able to recruit guys like Robbie Grimsley, who was Mr. Minnesota, a guy that chose North Dakota State over some interest from some Big Ten schools. And then they go out and they get a guy like Jabril Cox, who had offers from Iowa and Iowa State. I mean, like Jeff Choate said, when Montana State was preparing for North Dakota State last year, Jeff Choate said, I don't know where they found this Cox kid, but this kid can play anywhere. He's like, I'm talking about anywhere. Notre Dame, Washington, Wisconsin, anywhere. And I think that's the level that North Dakota State has reached. I think the success has bred so much of a great recruiting pitch, because you can say, hey, come here. You will win. You will do nothing but win, and you will even win when you're playing against some of the schools that we're maybe trying to steal you from, schools like Iowa State and Kansas State and Minnesota. So just the level that they've reached, the recruiting that they've reached, it's unbelievable. It's unprecedented, honestly.
It is, and I think just, you know, a year like this where it's odd, where they're replacing so much, coming off, you know, back-to-back titles and 7 out of 8 years, they probably have a little bit of chip on their shoulder, because people are going to start pointing to some of these other programs saying, hey, this is the end of the dynasty. Well, you know what? It probably isn't. I mean, I felt 3 years ago when James Madison beat him in the semifinals, I didn't think it was time to say the dynasty is over. I just, you know, it was halted at that time. But sure enough, it continued, and I feel that now they're feeling they've got to protect what everybody's done ahead of them, and they're going to be a favorite in probably every game except for maybe at South Dakota State, depending on where those teams stand come October 26th. But they have a chance to go out there, put up a big season, regular season, and be a 1 or 2 seed in the play, and have home field advantage in the playoffs. So they're going to have a good chance to get back to Frisco, even though they have so much change this year.
Rest of the stats, preseason FCS top 25. The top 10 included 3 teams from the Big Sky Conference: Eastern Washington, UC Davis, and Weber State. All 3 of those teams shared the Big Sky Conference title a year ago. All 3 earned playoff seeds, and all 3 won playoff games, including Eastern Washington winning several playoff games and advancing all the way to that FCS National Championship game where they fell to North Dakota State. But, Craig, I want to ask you about the other 2 teams in the FCS stats top 25. That's Montana State and Montana. Montana State comes in at number 14 in the first stats poll, and Montana down at number 25. But I know in the preseason preview you wrote for both stats as well as Athlon Sports that you had Montana State up at number 8, and I know you had the Grizzlies there lingering in the top 20 as well. What is your take on the 2 Montana schools, and do you think that this is a year where the Big Sky might be able to fight for 5 playoff spots, which is something that has never happened for the Big Sky Conference?
I think 5 is a definite possibility because, the committee is, they're selecting the field year to year, but, it has to be in the back of their mind, the type of year the Big Sky had last year. And if they have another great year like that, they have to reward a conference. So I think 5 is a possibility. When I had Montana State number 8 in my preseason ballot, that was a while ago. That was before it was learned that Chris Murray wasn't going to be back. I still feel they're a top 10 possibility. Maybe 8's probably a little high going in, but I'm still going to stick by it because I think they're going to have a tremendous year. I think Tucker Rovig has to prove himself over the long haul, but that's also where you add in Troy Anderson, on offense and sometimes maybe at quarterback. So I think they're going to have a really strong year. I think, I even feel they could be the 3rd best team ahead of Weber State, but Weber State's, certainly feeling some of the people doubting them, so they could really, come on strong. Montana, I think they're going to be outstanding. They have a lot back. Obviously, they brought in some players as well. It's hard to pick against the Bobby Houck team. They were a little disappointing with the 6-5 overall record last year. I think that Portland State game, ultimately kept them out of the playoffs. But I think their schedule is quite hard. I think that first game with South Dakota will go a long way for where they're headed. I mean, that's a huge win on the road if they can get it done. But if they don't, well, then they have to start worrying because early in the year you got those other trips to Oregon and UC Davis. But I think they're a very talented team. I think, they could be a 7-8 win kind of team in the regular season. I think their game at Montana State, and again, what a tough road schedule. I think that could decide whether they get back to the playoffs. But yes, if there's a 5th team coming out of the league, you have to include Montana in the conversation.
No doubt. He is Craig Haley from Stats FCS. Craig, tell people how can they follow your work, how can they follow you on the social media, and how can they find your great coverage of the FCS?
Sure. It's at Craig Haley on Twitter. And our FCS website is www.fcs.football. I also write for Athlon Sports. But it's that time of the year where we got a little bit of everything going on, so we're certainly excited.
Greg, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll make sure everybody goes and checks him out. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Coulter. I appreciate it.
Craig Haley, Stats FCS, great insight from the national FCS picture, and just affirming everything we've talked about here on Two Tail Nuanez about the potential of 5 Big Sky Conference teams getting into the FCS playoffs. I think it's going to come right down to it. I think that Cat-Grizz game could be a playoff game for one or even both sides of the rivalry, and Weber State, we'll see if they can continue to maintain their momentum as 2-time Big Sky Conference champs. I think Eastern Washington has the most conducive schedule to success And they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Eric Berrier. And then UC Davis, a litany of talent, a litany of veteran players, and one of, if not the best quarterbacks in the country, in Jake Mayer. So it'll be an interesting race to follow, and we'll give you all the different factors, both from Montana, Montana State, and the rest of the Big Sky as August marches on. Hey, are you tired of your business travel rates being jacked up when you travel for the summer? Fear not when you choose the Wingate by Wyndham. Many other hotels raise corporate travel rates, but the Wingate is committed to keeping their rates the same year-round for qualified customers. If you're a business traveler who is tired of summer rate increases, Wingate by Wyndham can help you all summer and all year. Wingate by Wyndham offers great year-round rates for the corporate travelers with a bonus of extra Wyndham Rewards points. Just give Kim or Alicia a call, 406-541-8000. That's 541-8000 today to learn more. Let the Wingate by Wyndham in Missoula make you feel at home, even if you're not. Hey, get those phone lines ready, 329-1899. On the other side, we got one last Name Your Tune. We're sending two of you at least a pair of tickets to the B-52s at the Kettle House Amphitheater next week. One more registration. We got 3 registers already. We need a 4th. All you got to do is give us a call and name that tune. That's next.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, who pump it up, pump it up.
Don't think you have time for lunch? Town Pump has your back right down the road. Burritos in the deli are 2 for $2.22. Wash it down with your favorite fountain-sized drink, any size, for just $1. Pick up lunch or a snack on your way to summer adventure at Town Pump.
Town Pump, right down the road, pump it up.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer, and Clark Fork Law Offices in Missoula is here to help. Our team specializes in worker compensation, personal injury, and Social Security disability. We fight for the benefits you deserve. Call Clark Fork Law at 728-0168 for a free consultation, or visit clarkforklaw.com. Again, 728-0168.
It happens. You're positive you put your bank card back in your wallet, but the next time you need it, it's missing. Avoid the panic and take control with the MyCard app and debit card from Farmer State Bank. Our app lets you control your debit card and securely turn it off right from your phone. Safe, secure, instant. MyCard is available only at Farmer State Bank. Ask about it at any of our 9 locations or learn more at farmersebank.com. Farmer State Bank, member FDIC.
What do you get when you mix every NFL preseason game? Cold beer and the best wings in Missoula? The Desperado Sports Tavern. The Desperado is Missoula's premier Southside sports tavern. With 32 HD TVs, there's not a chance you'll miss a second of every NFL preseason game. It's time to start watching your favorite players and building your fantasy team at the Desperado. That's cold beer, NFL preseason, the best wings in Missoula, and you at the Desperado Sports Tavern, located on Russell, across from the Y.
Hey, Tutel Nuanez here. Can't tell you how many times we've heard the face for radio joke since we came on SWX television, but it's been a fun endeavor so far.
And now our esteemed producer Tommy is pushing the envelope even further. We got our own YouTube channel.
That's right. If you want to watch us every day from your computer, your tablet, your cell phone, you can check out Tutel Nuanez on YouTube.
Tutel Nuanez, live every weekday from 4 to 6 in the afternoons on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula, SWX Montana statewide, and now around the planet Earth on YouTube.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Hello, good evening. Colton Nuanez. Dante Olson, the lone player from the Big Sky Conference on the Buck Buchanan watch list. The senior linebacker and preseason Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year earned consensus All-American honors a year ago by piling up 151 tackles to lead the nation. He also led Montana with 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 3 interceptions. The 6'3", 237-pounder from Medford, Oregon, is one of 3 finalists for the Buck. last season, given to the best defensive player in the football championship subdivision. On Monday afternoon, when the Miami Marlins took the field in Game 1 of a doubleheader against the New York Mets, Hassan Diaz made his Major League Baseball debut. Diaz becomes the 73rd former Missoula Osprey to make it to the big show. Diaz played for the 2015 Osprey, where he hit .360 with 13 home runs and 51 RBIs. He earned Pioneer League MVP and Arizona Diamondbacks Minor League Player of the Year. And finally, former Montana offensive lineman William Pales was claimed off of waivers by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last Thursday from the Indianapolis Colts. Pales has now played for 6 teams after signing in the NFL as an undrafted free agent in 2014. The 6'8", 340-pounder was an all-league player for the Grizzlies.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Welcome back to Tutel Nuanez. No Tutel, just Nuanez. I was flustered when I got in here, but now I'm doing great. Now I'm in the zone, talking some fall camp, talking some FCS football. Appreciate my guests, Brooks Nuanez and Craig Haley, for joining me. It's been a fun day. It is Colter Nuanez, broadcasting to you live on 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide on SWX Montana Television, and around the globe on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, type in Tutel Nuanez. Go check out that live stream that Tommy's got all fixed up, making us look all pretty even when we're not. As always, broadcasting to you live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway. Now carrying Husqvarna dirt bikes, Beta dirt bikes, and the brand new Razor 1000s. Check them out at Kurtz Polaris. If you want to find us online, 1029ESPN.com. You can also hit us up on Facebook, Facebook.com/ESPN Missoula. You can also find all our good works at SkylineSportsMT.com. Stepping out of the college football universe for the first time in the first 97 minutes of the show, we're going to talk a little music. Kettle House Amphitheater, one of the great small venues in all of music, in my opinion. I've been to more than a dozen shows out there the last 2 summers, and it's definitely one of the great parts about Missoula. It's a great place to just take in a show. Every genre of music is great out there, and I've seen a variety of acts. Watching the sunset along the Blackfoot River and taking in a show, and the logistics out there are flawless. I mean, the parking is never that big of a headache. The to and from, especially if you take the shuttle buses, it's great. Logjam is doing an outstanding job out there, and it's a great place. But later on this week, August 8th to be specific, the B-52s going to play out there. That's going to be a really fun new wave show from some of the pioneers of new wave music. And Tutel Nuanez, the last week and a half or so, we've been doing a little Name That Tune contest. And if you name that tune correctly, you win yourself a pair of Missoula Osprey tickets, and you also get entered in for our ticket giveaway for 2 tickets to that B-52s concert out at the Kettle House Amphitheater. So all you got to do right now is you got to listen here. We're going to give you about 10, 12 seconds of a song. Today's Name That Tune. Give us a call. Tell us that tune, and we'll get you registered for these B-52 tickets. Go ahead, Reese. Give them a taste of what we got for today's Name That Tune. All right. Pretty iconic, pretty memorable. If you know it, you know it. 329-1899. Give us a call right now and tell us. Go ahead and name that tune. We go now to the Rankage Brothers RV phone line. Welcome in. Who are we speaking with?
This is Paul.
Hey, Paul. Welcome to Tutel Nuanez. Can you name that tune?
Rock Lobster.
By? Who's it by?
Rock Lobster.
Do you know who sings it?
Oh, B-52s.
Of course. We had to give you one B-52s, and we couldn't use the Love Shack, but it is Rock Lobster by the B-52s. Congratulations, Paul. Very well done. Are you excited about this show? If you win these tickets, are you going to be stoked to go out to the...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I might even put on a beehive hairdo.
I love it. Have you been out to the Kettle House Amphitheater yet?
I have a few times. It's great.
Awesome. It's a great venue. It's a wonderful addition to Missoula. Hey, Paul, thanks so much for calling. We appreciate it. Congratulations on getting registered. Give Reese your information, just your name, phone number, and we will get you all entered in. And tomorrow, tune in to Tutel Nuanez. We'll be doing this ticket giveaway tomorrow from our 4 finalists, but you also win yourself a pair of Osprey tickets just for getting that one right. Well done, Paul, and we'll talk to you soon.
Colter, thank you. Appreciate it. Enjoy the show.
There you go. Got 4 people entered. Ryan Tutel, he'll be back tomorrow. And we will we'll make sure we pick from these 4 finalists to get the tickets for that great show down at the Kettle House Amphitheater, the B-52s in Missoula, August 8th. Want to give you a couple Grizz position battles to watch with the Montana Grizzlies opening up fall camp tomorrow, and we got a bunch of other stuff to tease for later on this week with Tutel's illustrious return. So we get to all of that after this.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Florence Coffee Company believes in bringing you the best this summer with real fruit puree and our cool and refreshing drinks, like a Bellini soda made with real fruit puree and soda water, or a matcha bliss smoothie with the intensity of matcha green tea blended with a variety of fruit flavors like strawberry, mixed berry, peach, mango, or banana. Stop by any of our locations across western Montana for a refreshing summer drink today.
Florence Coffee Company. When you got an important decision to make, like buying a new RV or manufactured home, you want to make sure you got all the facts. I'm Jim Rankage with Rankage Brothers RV. For 60 years, we've been Montana's premier RV manufactured home dealer. And with the longevity comes a wealth of knowledge and experience. Rankage Brothers is and always has been a family business. Our promise is to be there for you before and after the sale. Visit us today at 2000 West Broadway or RankageBrothersRV.com.
Hi, boys and girls. Ryan Tutel
and Colter Nuanez
from Tutel Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tutel Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017, and now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television. And you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Colter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tutel Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
And talk sweet talk, I got a knocking in my knees and a wobble in my walk, and I'm trembling. That's right, you got me shaking. When you take me in your arms to talk romance, my heart starts a doing that St. Rita dance, and I'm dancing.
Welcome back, Tutel Nuanez. No Tutel, just Nuanez, but that's just for one day. Ryan Tutel will be back in the saddle tomorrow. But Colter Nuanez here with you, broadcasting live 102.9 ESPN Missoula, statewide on SWX Montana Television, as well as around the globe on YouTube TV. Go check us out at all 3 of those different outlets. We're broadcasting live from the Kurtz Polaris Studios. Kurtz Polaris, 2904 West Broadway, now carrying Husqvarna dirt bikes, Beta dirt bikes, and the brand new Razor 1000. Check them out at Kurtz Polaris. If you missed anything, in the first hour and 45 minutes of the show, we had the Montana Football Hour. First segment, breaking down a little bit of my thoughts on the evolution of fall camp, both the good and the bad. Some thoughts from Jeff Choate on the evolution of fall camp. He says, these kids these days, they got it so daggum easy. And I agree. It's not the same bloodbath it used to be, and there's some good parts about that, and there's some bad parts about that. So we talked a lot about that in the first segment. We're also joined by Brooks Nuanez at SkylineSportsMT.com, giving you three big things, three big storylines out of both Montana and Montana State's ensuing fall camps. The Cats, 4 days in. The Grizz reported yesterday they got a day of meetings today. They'll hit the Dornblazer Fields tomorrow. So we have some intriguing conversations there from Brooks Nuanez. And we also talked a little bit about the FCS preseason stats national poll, and Dante Olson landed on the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. Hour number 2, great conversation with Craig Haley, both about the Bobcats, the Grizzlies, the Big Sky Conference, and the rest of the FCS playoff picture, and just the national picture as a whole in terms of where North Dakota State stacks up this year. They were the consensus number 1 in the poll once again. Might as well just etch that in stone. Just get it tattooed on your forehead. NDSU's number 1. Everybody else fighting for every spot after that. But we got into how that's happened, why it's happened, and will it continue to happen. And we also talked a lot about the way that the Big Sky fits into the national playoff picture, and can the Big Sky get 5 teams into the playoffs. So check that out. If you missed any of that, you can find it on the podcast. The podcast is located on the TuneIn Radio app. It's also on iTunes. It's also on Spotify. And you can also find it at the station website, 1029ESPN.com. Podcast proudly presented by the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. So go check it out. Want to give you a couple of storylines out of the Grizz fall camp with them hitting the field tomorrow. Some key position battles for the Montana Grizzlies. I think that last year the deficiencies in both depth and talent were addressed up front by Bobby Hauck. He talked about them consistently and almost relentlessly. The offensive line, the depth at linebacker, the talent and depth in the secondary. And then I think following last season with the Montana D-line only notching 7 total sacks, I think that there was an added priority on finding an edge rusher, or maybe 2 or several edge rushers. Bobby Hauck, his teams the first time around 2003 through 2009, they made a living getting to the quarterback. They had all sorts of dudes that were premier edge rushers. They got to the point where they had seasons where they were bringing guys like Lance Spencer and Dustin DeLuey and Mike Murphy off the bench, and those guys were going out and getting 6, 8, 10 sacks. Not to mention the headlining guys like Tim Bush and Croy Bierman and guys like that. They were playing ahead of them. We're just piling them up. Croy Bierman won the Buck Buchanan Award in 2007. But the pass rush from Andy Pedic pre-Bobby Hauck through guys like Tim Bush and Lance Spencer and Mike Murphy through guys like Croy Bierman and Severin Campbell and Jace Palmer. It was an elite pass rush, no doubt. Bobby Hauck's first tenure, and I know that they really wanted to address that, and that'll be a key during this fall camp as the competition there. But for me, the top position group battles, here's the 4 I have listed, and then a 5th with a question mark, just because I think there's some intriguing talent there. But the 4 I have as my top position battles for the Montana Grizzlies. I think that the interior defensive line is going to be an intriguing competition, because I think that Montana has some really talented young but really inexperienced players. Braden Deming showed flashes last year. I think he's a really good guy. He's now a redshirt sophomore out of Billings West. He's got the size. He's got the girth. I saw him at the Big Sky Outdoor Track Championships, and he's looking the part, no doubt. And if he can really solidify one of those inside spots, that could definitely make waves for the Grizz D-line. Eli Alford was a kid who played as a freshman last year, a transfer from Air Force Prep, so he does have kind of an extra year out of high school, a little bit more physically mature, but now he's a true sophomore. But I liked his grit. I liked his hand punch. I thought he was good at the point of attack last year in limited reps. So if he can come along, that could be a boon for the depth. And then Alex Gubner is a kid who he is physically mature. He's physically ready. He's 6'3", 295 pounds, and he's really physical, and he's mean. He plays with a mean streak, and that popped right away during spring ball. But he's also a guy that's been up and down in terms of mastering the scheme. But you got those 3 guys in there, and I think if those 3 guys can sort of pan out, then all of a sudden Jesse Sims can move out to strong end, and I think that's his more natural position. I think that could help solidify the defensive line. So I think that the battle for those among those young guys, who can rise to the top, that's going to be key on the Montana defensive front. I think edge rusher is going to be really an intriguing one because R.J. Nelson is a guy that has a lot of talent, but he doesn't necessarily have the mass to play up front yet. I'm interested to see if he's put on some mass in the offseason. I almost guarantee you he has. He was sort of thrown to the fire early on, and he kind of had to – it was kind of a trial by fire. So we'll see if he can make some progress, and if he put on some weight. If he has, he'll be able to at least fight for a job there at that edge position. And then Jed Nagler was a guy that was recruited as a wide receiver. I always thought he was an outside linebacker coming out of Whitefish, Montana. He was a guy that was he had amazing track times, a state champion in the 100 and the 200 and the high jump, a guy that maybe could have even transitioned to become a decathlete or a multi-athlete if he would have chosen track. I thought he always had the build of an edge, an outside linebacker or maybe just a kind of hybrid bandit type guy. But he played receiver his first couple of years under Bob Stitt, moved to defense last year, suffered a bad knee injury, but he looks to be back fully healthy from that. If he can make strides, that could be interesting. But those two guys are going to be battling with three different transfers who Montana brought in the offseason. You have Mason Vineyard from Washington State. He's 6'5", 235 pounds. Looks the part all day. He's long. He's lean. He runs really, really well. Ran a 10.900 in high school. So if he can, he might be the answer on the edge, but who knows? And Joe Babros, he's 6'4", 250. I'm really interested to see these transfers in person because you can tell right away just the physical makeup that they have and how and why they landed at the FCS level. Babros comes to Montana from NC State. And then one of the most intriguing guys in all of fall camp for Montana is going to be Ryder Rice. He's from Savage, Montana. He's a guy who played six-man in high school, played at Rocky Mountain College, but he was a Frontier Conference All-League player and an All-American last year at Rocky, led the Frontier with 12.5 sacks. I'm so interested to see how that production translates to this level. Will he be a guy that just contributes? Will he be a guy that pushes for a starting spot? Will that experience overwhelm the notion that he comes from a lower level? We'll see. It's going to be fascinating. The third position group battle I got down is running back because I think that Adam Eastwood returns, but I think that there are several young guys and a newcomer that are chomping at the bit to maybe steal carries from Adam Eastwood, led by Marcus Knight, the junior college transfer. I thought he improved as much as any player on the roster during spring drills. He was a guy that he showed a lot of juice right out the gates, but he didn't necessarily show the patience required for a Division I running back right off the bat, but he learned some patience. His vision seemed to improve as the as spring football went along. So he'll be a guy that pushes Eastwood. But I also think that Drew Turner, a redshirt freshman out of Kalispell Glacier, will be in the mix. And I also think that Garrett Graves might thrust himself into that mix as well. Garrett Graves is a guy that played quarterback through most of spring, but I think that he's a talented enough guy. I think you got to figure out a way to get him on the field, even if it's as a short yardage back. But I think there's a lot of solid guys in the running backs room. Who can emerge? Can somebody emerge as a guy that might be able to be an elite talent? We'll see. The fourth group, that I have written down is safety. Robbie Houck is entrenched. He's a guy that runs the alley better than anybody in the league, and his job in terms of what Montana wants him to do defensively is not a lot to do with coverage. It has to do with coming downhill, cleaning things up, being the last line of defense, especially in the run game, and being uber physical. And he was tremendous at that last year, notching 95 tackles. But the spot next to him with Reed Miller, graduated. Gavin Robertson really had a hard time kind of finding a solidified spot there last year after transferring from Arizona. But there's some talented guys there, including Nash Fouch, a former 3-star recruit out of Woodinville, Washington, who looks the part all day. Michael McGinnis, who's been one of the fastest risers for Montana the last couple of years, a guy that was an academic scholarship kid out of Sidney, Montana. Great track times, really raw football player, but he's really developed. He's about 195, 200 pounds now, and he looks the part as well. And Jackson Pepe might throw himself into the mix there as well, a kid from Kalispell Glacier. So a lot of young guys, a lot of redshirt freshmen fighting for position there. And then Gavin Crow, he's back at his natural spot of safety rather than playing corner like he did a year ago. So I think that Montana went from maybe having a talent deficiency at safety to having a bunch of young guys who can play. Now they just have to go out and prove it. And then the one I had a question mark by is tight ends, because I think Colin Bingham is entrenched there as a senior, a potential captain. But I do think that there's a couple really talented guys. Bryson Deming, who's Braden Deming's twin brother, He's an uber talented guy who showed some flashes a year ago, and he looked really, really big last time I saw him too. So he could be a guy that could be pushing for some playing time. And then Matt Rensvold from Polson, Montana, he showed flashes last year as well, caught a couple touchdowns. And I've heard from people inside the program, they say Matt Rensvold has among the best hands on the entire Grizz football team. And that's saying something when you got a receiving core that includes guys like Jerry Louis McGee and Gabe Sulcer and Sammy Akem and Samari Torre and Mitch Roberts. You know, they got a whole bunch of dudes who can catch the football at a high level. So saying Rensvold has some of the best hands on the team, high praise for people inside the Montana football program. So we'll see. Bingham's going to get he's going to get a bunch of reps. He's one of the best blocking tight ends in the league. And I think he's a guy that's really benefited from that position coming back. But how do the other guys fit in? Can Rensvold push him? Can Deming push him? It remains to be seen. And then, of course, we're going to have our eyes all over that offensive line. I think the addition of Cordell Pilons and Moses Mallory is huge for the Grizz. If those two guys can solidify those two guard spots, and Cy Sermon is what he's being touted as center, a guy that has great chemistry with Dalton Sneed, all of a sudden Montana's interior offensive line could be a lot better, and that could help Montana in everything they want to do with their DNA, from converting short yardage situations in the run game to protecting Dalton Sneed better to just operating overall better on offense. I think it will again be a key for the Montana Grizzlies. And of course, it's going to be fun to watch the corners as well. I think that they need to develop some more talent there, or some more depth, I thought Darian Nash and Justin Calhoun were better than I expected them to be as converted wide receivers a year ago. And we'll see if they can take the next step. We'll see if some of the new additions there. So we'll have a ton of coverage for you guys. I'll be down at practice tomorrow interviewing Bobby Hauck. I'm going to watch as much as I can before I beat back here and join Ryan Tutel. A couple other things to look forward to this week. Of course, Tutel will be back tomorrow, so we'll have that. We've been doing this series of live broadcasts from around Missoula. This Thursday, we're at Red's Bar, so come check us out. We'll be giving away a pair of tickets to the Grizz at Oregon football game on September 14th. So come hang out with Tutel and Nuanez. The first 20 Widmer Brothers Hefeweizens, they're on us. They're for free. So come drink beer. Come hang out with the boys down at Red's Bar on Thursday. And also tomorrow we'll be giving away those B-52s tickets. So that'll be a fun one as well. And then finally, the ESPN Roundtable this week featuring former Montana and Montana State defensive coordinator Ty Gregorak. Jam-packed week on Tutel and Nuanez. Football is back. It's the greatest time of year there is. Ryan Tutel back in the saddle tomorrow. In the meantime, be well.
In Western Montana, we know shopping local matters, and you may think you'd pay more for the quality and customer service that comes with it.